Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the AAA podcast. I'm joined here with our guest, our the guy who actually usually hosts the podcast, Rowan Amann. This is episode number 16. Rowan is a former college baseball player, retired from Pacific Lutheran University. Rowan is also my former college roommate, classmate, and best friend. Um, his experience was a driveline baseball physical therapist intern, and then he was also a intern right at Champion Sports Performance, GA at Cleveland State, and he is now with the Boston Red Sox organization as a strength coach, and then also most importantly, a two-time bone marrow transplant donor. So,
That is
Ron
most
Ahmed,
important right there.
welcome back to the podcast.
Thank you, Anthony. Thank you for having me. It's good to be sitting in the chair, I guess, as a guest instead of a host. It's a little bit different, though. I'm kind of nervous.
Yeah, I actually hate being a host. We should actually just like switch it down.
Reverse
So
the roles. All right. Um, but yeah, good little intro there. I was thinking about this earlier because I was kind of getting myself prepped to be maybe in the hot seat as a guest for this, and it was kind of cool to think about just like how fast everything has happened career-wise. Driveline was 2023 summer. Um, and so 3 years ago, and now we're here. So things happen fast, but definitely a blessing.
yeah, it's actually crazy. How what's the transition been like going from you're literally just like studying in school and now you're in professional baseball?
Yeah, definitely not like linear, especially coming from Cleveland State, where I was a little bit more on my own, just as a nature of how that department was set up. There's definitely like kind of a weird transition going back into like a full-on learning mode and being like an assistant coach and kind of having some more of those like remedial tasks. Hard at the beginning, but I kind of changed my perspective over the last couple weeks. Been learning a ton, so that's been awesome. I was listening to a Tim Riley podcast with Alec Blennis. I can't remember which one of them said it, but they said you don't have to be there, but get there, and that was a big thing for me. Like just kind of like listening to those words and understanding like you don't have to be the smartest in the room at all times. It's probably a blessing to not be the smartest person in the room, as long
Yeah.
as you're learning, working hard, and just trying to get to the best version of yourself possible.
Yeah, for sure. I think something that I heard, I forgot who it was. I think it was actually Alex Harmozy. He's like a big business like influencer and like mentor, and he basically helps people with business mentoring. But he was like, it's kind of silly for you to be if you want like everyone wants to have the big name job, like wants to have the big title and like be at the highest position, but when you're there and you're too young, then you actually don't get to learn from anyone above you because you are already the highest person. Like an extreme example is like if you're the CEO, it's like you're not learning from anyone else because you're already at the top of the chain. You're like it's like it's he was like you should want to be in the lower positions earlier to learn from other people. If that makes sense.
No, for sure. That's something definitely I've been feeling like just how awesome it is to be in a position where I can learn from somebody who has experience in pro ball before. Um, I think I would have quit by now if it was my first year and I was just on my own having to figure things out. Like it's an insane world. So just getting to learn from someone and then being part of an organization that has like a really good development system going and a really good continued education like module system. So there's just like endless content of things to learn and new things to interact with. So
Yeah, for sure. So take us through like your journey of, I mean, we've kind of talked about it on the podcast before, but give us like maybe a little more of a detailed idea of what your career has been from the end of college to now, like being in professional baseball. Like, was that the path you were on to begin with? Obviously, like you're doing you graduated with pre PT, right? Is that
yeah,
what it was?
concentration, pre-PT kinesiology.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, there's definitely a lot of luck involved in my journey. That's another thing I've kind of reflected on recently. Is just I've kind of just gone with the flow and things have worked out and worked out really well. I guess that kind of started with reaching out to Dylan when I was a junior in college and just asking if he could basically create a position for me to just come in and observe PT stuff. Um, And then just like what that turned into was like this awesome kind of like under the books, getting to do stuff that I probably wasn't supposed to be able to do. But we kind of built that trust and just got some really fun experience there. And that just really opened my eyes to like this whole world of sports performance and just like sports development as well. Even on the PT side, like going through mostly rehab clients, just seeing how like performance was worked into that and like an end goal of returning somebody to better than when they started or even pre-injury was really cool to see. Was really burnt out with school when I finished up. 4 years of college baseball and classes kind of had me recontemplating my life's decisions. So I really wanted to take some time off and just kind of have some freedom in my schedule, get to, chase a couple different hobbies down, see what I could do with them. But also wanted to get a little bit more background in S&C before I applied to PT schools. I talked to a lot of people who kind of recommended that path. So had interacted with a lot of Mike Reinold stuff throughout undergrad. Thought it was a really cool facility they had in Mass. So they had summer internships, applied to those, ended up getting it. So graduated college and just moved across the country, which was kind of my goal, just go experience something new. Had an awesome time there. I think I was there for like 3 months, maybe a little bit more, and really just fell in love with like the S&C side of that internship. And then also really started to realize that like the settings that I wanted to be in for physical therapy were very few and far between. And especially early in my career, like wanting to work with the populations I wanted to work with, S&C was probably a more direct path to get there. So kind of started to change my mentality there of what I really wanted to do end goal in my career. Ended up moving to Cleveland kind of on a whim, just to live with one of my buddies who was going to school out there. Was supposed to be just kind of a temporary thing, maybe do another internship or just work a little bit in a gym and apply to PT schools. And then really shortly after moving there, ended up seeing a listing for the Cleveland State job. Applied to that thinking I had no chance and no qualifications to actually get it. And then I got it. And then just had to figure everything out. Just kind of fake it till you make it there. But had an awesome time there. Year one was just a lot of like messing up a ton and learning from it. But luckily, I was put in a really good environment to kind of have those failures and have not everything just flip upside down. Year two was a lot more just like kind of knowing what to expect and knowing what to do and where I wanted to change my approach from year one. And then with that year two, kind of came some new opportunities. My coworker went on maternity leave, so I got to take over for her teams. I got to work a little bit with the basketball teams over there, which are kind of it's the main sport, so they're a little bit more of a niche club that you get to be part of. Um, and so yeah, so got a lot of new experiences there. Thought that I was just gonna finish that up all through the spring, and then see what was available for me over the summer, and then maybe try to get into pro ball next cycle of jobs. So for the 2027 season, but ended up having you and another guy that I worked with when I was in Boston, kind of reach out that the Red Sox had an opening that they were taking applications for. So got my name in there, got through the interview process, and ended up getting the job. So now we're here. Definitely underqualified, but really eager to continue working hard and learning, and just doing everything I can to continue progressing and hopefully contribute something to this field.
Yeah, no, it's cool to see like the journey and kind of have a like just a micro lens into what's been happening. It's funny because like whenever I bring you up, I have to think like, oh wait, like he's not at Cleveland State, he's like a pro ball coach. I'm like, oh yeah, he's Boston Red Sox, and like it's just weird to like say because it all happens so quickly. But um, how's it been in terms of like, I mean, you went from the West Coast like all the way to Boston for an internship and then to Cleveland. Like one could say you're crazy for just like traveling across the country and then going to places you've never been and doing opportunities that like I don't know that just came up like that. What made you kind of like dive into that?
Yeah, I think I've always been very intrigued by the idea of having a really diverse system of like influences. While I was at while we were in school at Pacific Lutheran, somebody. one of the professors talked about like academic incest to me at one point, which is a crazy term. But I actually really love it, and I think it happens a lot more than people realize, is that they end up just spending their whole lives in this area that they grew up, interacting with these same populations, with the same coaches, with the same type of athletes, and it leads to kind of this staleness of information that you take in. Um, I think at a certain point, it's really good to specialize and probably have that staleness where you are kind of an expert in your field. But especially early on, like not really knowing 100% what I wanted to do, that idea of traveling, getting to experience different places, almost having like your job also be a little vacation, live somewhere for a couple months, work a job, see where the next one takes you, um, meet a lot of new people, get a lot of bridges built up around you with that big network, and then also just get a really diverse like job experience built out underneath you. That was really the intrigue for me. And then kind of going back to this luck aspect, I definitely had a family that was really supportive of me just kind of jumping around from place to place and being really far away from home and never really coming back, but still being really supportive of what I was doing. So, and friends as well. Friends are important.
Yeah, that's interesting because it's like something that's really cliche, but I actually learned when I was a freshman, like learning business, like we're in business school. I think it was like a data class, and about how like the decisions you make with data are based off of like the people you have on your staff and your team, and about having like a diverse thinking like in your department. And it sounds simple, but it's like if you only hire people that think the same way you do, like it's kind of silly because then no one ever like disagrees with each other. Like you kind of just agree on the same things. Whereas like if you have someone who's really smart who actually might think of things differently and actually might conflict with what you say, it's actually more it's actually better for growth because you actually get ideas challenged and think of things differently. We're actually talking about this earlier because me, Coach Dakin, and our pitching coach at ISP were talking about mechanics, and like the three of us thought of different ways to attack the same issue. And Zach was like, "This is what I miss is like people having different ideas because if we all just like think of the same thing, then we don't go anywhere, you know." And I think it takes a little bit of selfishness to want to have someone in your department that thinks differently than you. But like you said, it kind of broadens your view of everything.
Yeah, for sure. And I know we talked about this somewhat recently in a really quick conversation. I really used to get kind of like frustrated and like annoyed with perspectives that were different than mine. Even like, things on the internet that you see that everybody kind of shits on. Um, Changing that perspective recently for me was that like probably nothing's can be labeled good and bad. There's uses for everything, and things exist because they've worked for somebody. And that's something that I've experienced in pretty much every job I've been at, is where you have that like growth at the very beginning where you're really uncomfortable because you don't necessarily agree and know how to use the information that you've been presented. And so you kind of sit there and think about this job that you have and this position you're in, and you're kind of like, oh, I don't really know like what I'm doing here if I can't like just contribute immediately or use this information that you're using. And then there's like this blend moment before, I don't know, the end of your time there, I guess, where it kind of all starts to click and you kind of start to understand like how this framework can fit into your system, even if it's very different. Just more tools in the tool bag that you can use down the road. And that's something that's been really special about each individual place I've been at, is those little things that you pick up and those little moments where that kind of clicks and goes like, oh, now I understand. This is how I can use that.
Do you think it can make it more confusing? Because I don't know. There's been times where I've maybe this is just myself, but where I've had so many ideas and like so many things. It's like having a big menu to me. Like if you've been to the Cheesecake Factory, you have like this huge menu of options, and it honestly, at least for me, it's like I wish I wish there was more constraints. Like for example, like at TCU we have everything. So it's like I'm not con there, I can't have the excuse of like, oh yeah, we can't do that because of this because we do have everything. Does that make sense? Like I know for you guys it was like you can't sprint. So it's like
Um, But yeah, I do see what you're saying from a certain aspect. Like if you have everything in front of you, it's like hard to decide like what you want to use and like what's, for lack of a better term, like the most optimal route to go. And I do definitely get stressed out with that from time to time and have to kind of pull myself back and remember that it's probably not about being the most optimized. It's probably about being as consistent as possible and just
Right.
also having fun with the training. Um, so I'd say there, like, just remembering that you have your big rocks that you're trying to hit, and then there's probably a million and one different ways to attack everything else. And so having the option for that much variety in the long run is probably good, even if in an acute setting it can be kind of stressful of what you want to choose.
Yeah. For myself, I found myself in the place where it's like the same thinking, everything has a time and a place. And so I'll find myself answering questions and being like, well, it depends, you know? Because it's like,
Yeah.
it does depend. Like, they're like literally, like, I was someone who's like anti foam roller, and now I'm just like, well, if it makes you feel good, then do it. Like, I'm not going to take something away from you that makes you feel good. And if you want to come in before and after your training session and foam roll, like, I really don't care. Like 2 years ago, I would have been like, I'm going to kick these things out of here.
No, for sure. And that's kind of where I'm coming, like going back to that point of like nothing's probably inherently good or bad. I'm sure the conversation will come back around on this one. But a big one that's happened in my time with the Red Sox is my perspective on like aerobic capacity and conditioning.
Hmm.
I know in college we talked a lot about how stupid some of our conditioning was, and it was. It truly was stupid, a lot of it. But I think at the time, just being where I was as far as my knowledge and like how I was thinking about it, I went about those conversations very wrong. Where the usefulness of aerobic capacity is certainly there for every athlete, no matter what your sport is. And it is definitely important to have some sort of aerobic base and probably do some sort of aerobic work in season out of season just to maintain that. Where I was really out on it for a while.
Why,
Eh,
like, why did your opinion change? Like, why should someone be doing aerobic fitness year long?
I think I just got like a new perspective pushed on me, where aerobic capacity is definitely an important metric for your recovery off the field. Um, I think a lot of times I was just thinking about it, and a lot of people do think about it on just like your individual bouts during a game. So like talk for a pitcher, for example, like how fast they can recover between pitches. Like it probably has some impact on that, but it's probably a lot less than the impact of when you go home at night and you're sleeping and your body's trying to recover from the outing you just had. How good you feel the next day, your capacity to handle a hard training session the next day or the day after that, and just across an entire week or entire month, like how much work you can actually get in without things breaking down.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people when they think aerobic fitness is just strictly like running miles, and it's not what it has to be. Like you could do non-impact alternatives. For us, we do like for our pitchers who throw, they do 30 on 30 off like mobility circuits with med ball throws and mobility and some light intensity plyometrics. And so I think it just goes back to the spectrum thinking of like and stupid, it doesn't do anything for you, and then you have like aerobic training is bad and stupid, it's gonna like hurt you type of thing. But um, yeah, it was funny because I was at the Coach 'em Up conference this last weekend, and there one of the things that Alec Blennis was actually talking about. He was there and presented. He it was called conditioning for lifters. Like that was the presentation, and maybe not specifically um, or specifically like VO2 max and the measurements are like your VO2 max being higher is a bigger predictor of quality of life and longevity more than like smoking and drinking are, which I found to be super interesting. And so it's like Ashley, who we had an intern as an intern who's also with the Red Sox organization, is like aerobic fitness isn't even doesn't even have to be like necessarily specific to the athlete. It's just like if you want to be a healthy individual and a healthy person, like you should probably be doing some type of aerobic training. Like it doesn't have to be just because like like we're baseball players and we should be like conditioned. It's like it's for the fact of your ability to recover. And since your sport is repeat power, and like it's good to have your heart rate recover relatively quickly after something that is not only metabolically fatiguing, but also just like stress on the body in general.
Yeah, no, for sure. I've definitely, once again, was so out on aerobic conditioning for so long. Started working kind of back into my own training. Nothing crazy, but just kind of realizing that I should probably have at least a somewhat respectable VO2 max. So I
Yeah.
should probably try to get out and improve it a little bit. And I was really surprised on how bad it was starting off. Like my first 2 mile run I went on kicked my ass.
It's funny that you say you've been doing more conditioning lately because I have too. I've been, excuse me, doing more aerobic stuff, like bike intervals, lactic capacity work. And I've just noticed like a tremendous ability to recover between high intensity sprints. So I'll sprint like 2 days a week. And like now my rest time is almost like cut in half because I'll just like watch my heart rate pull down so quickly. It's actually crazy. And I've only been doing like maybe conditioning 2 to 3 times a week for the last 4 weeks, for the last month. That's it. It's just like I don't know. I feel a lot better, and I feel like I'm able to recover from my training a lot better, and I'm working out even more than I was before. Like I'm on a 6 day week program right now, and it's like I'm recovering faster than when I was doing 3 high intensity days.
Another fun part about running, I think specifically that I've kind of started to realize, and I think it's why so many people like it, is the progress is really simple and easy to track. With something on like the strength side of things, where you're like doing some a lift, it's very like day to day dependent, and also like you can't max out all the time, and you have like these ebbs and flows, and there's a lot that kind of goes into that performance. And certainly like probably once you cut down to some really low like mile times, that's the case. But even just like going out on like an easy, nice pace 3 mile run and just like tracking from session to session how gassed you felt when you came back. Like it's really fun to kind of see that progression. And then also like if you have any sort of like watch that tracks it or any app that tracks it, just seeing your times decrease and like what that easy run is as far as a mileage, a pace, is kind of fun to track.
Yeah. Yeah. Have you noticed that like more people have been running lately, or is it just me?
I don't know if I can like say that I think more people have been running because I think it's been very popular for a while. Um, but I think even just within like the little community of the coaches at in Portland, we kind of have days where we all go out and run together now, which is fun. It's a little club. And not everybody's going on every day, but it is fun to kind of have seen the pull of other people kind of coming into it. Um, Whether they were doing it before or not, I don't know. But now we kind of all try to sync up our training a little bit so we can have some some energy to kind of feed off of.
But let's switch gears a little bit. I want to hear about your biggest roadblock um, as a GA at Cleveland State. I mean, I know about it, but kind of just like tell everyone how many teams you had on top of like going to school, and just like what were what were the biggest problems that you had, and how was it kind of going through that? Because I'm assuming a lot of other strength coaches probably deal with the same thing.
Yeah, I think it's probably incredibly true at that mid-major level as well. Um, yeah, I had 6 teams, I think, in my first year, and then I dropped back to 5 for the half of my second year, and then once my coworker went on maternity leave, bounced up to I guess 9. I wasn't doing the programming for all of them. We did some programming ahead of time. Um, but yeah, just having like that volume of athletes is definitely tough, especially when you're young and somewhat inexperienced. It was a big learning curve to start because I felt like I had to provide each team with like very specific and individualized programs. And so I was spending so much of my time just like in front of a computer, stressing about how can I make a program different from the last one I wrote because it's a different team. And that's something that kind of lasted for a lot of that first year, is kind of having that pressure of like, I want to show them that I care. So I'm going to try to go this extra mile to make things as specific as possible for their sport. Um, Year two is kind of where I realized that maybe a better approach to that is to kind of have models to go off of. So like a out of season progression model and then an in season progression model that's standardized for just like athletes in general. And then tweaking things here and there based on the athletic schedule or a specific need of a certain group within that sport, and just making those small adjustments to kind of these bone programs, these skeletons of programs. And so that was probably one of the bigger hurdles that I overcame in my time there, is just learning how to deal with so many teams and so many athletes and be efficient with my time, where I wasn't spending um, all my hours away from work just preparing for the next day at work. Another hurdle that we've definitely talked a lot about is just the lack of resources we had at a small mid-major school. Even going back to that sprint example, like we were in the sub basement of a building. It was just long hallways outside of the room. Um, Year one, I was really just going at it, and I had my athletes sprint in the hallways. But it was just not a good use of our time. So I kind of cut that out in the second half of year one, and by year two, just kind of opted for some other stuff to get as close proximity to that as we could. Um, but yeah, just kind of learning how to manage in a small room with not a ton of equipment, uh, big groups. Some of the groups were 20 to 30 athletes, and we had uh, 8 racks, and not a lot of floor space in front of those, like in between those racks in front of them. So, writing a program that used the space efficiently, and spread people out as much as possible to create as much room for people to do their work, was another big thing. And that's something that has carried really well into this pro ball job, where we don't always have the best facilities. 2 weeks ago, we were lifting out on the concourse. So you walk outside the clubhouse and there's just fans walking by, and you're getting a lift in with the boys. Um, and so kind of understanding like how to be creative with the resources you do have, and also just understanding that getting any work in is better than getting no work in. So do the best with what you have. Sometimes you're going to have to cut it down to the really bare bones of what is actually pushing the needle. But at least you're doing something to help maintain and get you to the next week, where maybe you have a little bit more capacity to push things.
Yeah, the way we talk about it is like you have optimal and ideal. Like your optimal program is like the perfect program to be executed, and then ideal is like constrained by your athlete's training age, their resources, what you have access to, like yeah, all the little nitty gritty. And so it's like your perfect program has to turn into what's ideal for the constraints you have.
Um, I think the biggest thing that I took away from my time at Cleveland State is that you're responsible for your own learning at the end of the day and your continued learning. Because of the way things were set up, we just didn't have a lot of time to do any development and really talk about things as a staff. And so I could have been very comfortable, and oftentimes I was, where you just kind of show up, you do the work for the day, you go home, and it's just like nothing until the next day. But that doesn't really move you forward as far as your career goes. And so looking for opportunities outside of your workday, to go and learn, and even outside of school, because I was in class as well, to go and continue learning and interact with different material that you might not be interacting with during your workday. Um, some places, like I'm sure you guys at TCU, with a little bit bigger of a program, have a little bit more of that availability for intern and staff development, and it's kind of built into your day. But I think even there, if you're feeling like you're behind in something, I think it's on you to go seek answers. Nobody's gonna come to you and just give you the key that unlocks everything.
So, what were your ways of being able to continue to learn and develop yourself?
Um, Finding other people that I think the ideas aligned with what I was wanting to learn, whether that be us recording the few podcast episodes that we did over that time. That was always like a great way to like learn kind of what someone was about, and if I hadn't already, kind of dive into the stuff that they had out there. I do think social media is a fantastic place to do some very like baseline learning. Just scrolling through, find an account that maybe you haven't seen before that has some new ideas, interact with a couple of their videos, and then see if they have like links that take you to more in-depth viewpoints on what they teach and what they do. Listening to podcasts, of course. I know we've talked a lot about like the Coach 'em Up podcasts. Um, I think that's probably the best in the industry right now. And it's just because I think they do a good job of making conversations fun, but also like getting a lot of information out of the guests that they have. A lot of useful ideas that you can apply like pretty quickly to your own work. And then another route that I'm still fighting myself to get down is reading more. I'm not particularly a good reader, so it takes me forever to get through books. But I know like Kreider from Driveline has a that his on one of his blog posts is all about like books that he's read that he recommends to other people. And I've got picked up some of those and started reading those or gotten through them. And so that's another great way to kind of just get some learning in on the side is pick up a book, even if it doesn't necessarily have to do specifically with S&C. There's probably a lot of life lessons to be learned that you can apply to your situation.
Yeah. So going off of that, like I know that I mean I don't even know what to call it, but you had some books that I think you really liked. I know one of them was like Neil deGrasse Tyson. Is that how you say his name? And
Yeah.
what was the other guy?
Um,
Was it Matthew McConaughey?
oh yeah.
Do you feel like any of those books are the things that you have been into outside of strength and conditioning have helped shape your way of thinking or what you do in strength and conditioning?
Um, that's a tough question. I think yes. I don't know about the Neil deGrasse Tyson one, and I'll get to that one in a sec. As far as like the Matthew McConaughey one, Green Lights, or another one that I read last year was Anthony Bourdain's Kitchen Confidential. I think both those books highlight like a frame of mind and a way to live your life that does impact how you work as well. I would hope that people that I've worked with in the past would highlight like a couple things about working with me and beyond just like being a hard worker, like the positivity that I'm going to bring, the enjoyment of what I do every day. Like those are two pillars that I've kind of decided that I'm going to stand on. Not every day showing up to work is fun, but I do really truly enjoy what I do. And I see the art like that this work is, and I want to become a better artist in that sense. So showing up every day like really eager to create something new, create learning opportunities for both me and for other people, and just make it a really enjoyable experience for everybody. So I think like going back to those books and kind of things that they some of the things they talk about are frameworks and ideas that you can apply to your life on how you conduct yourself and how you treat other people that certainly impact you at work and the people that you surround yourself in and the opportunities that you create for yourself. Um, I talk about my journey being very lucky, but I do think part of that luck is people that I've connected with along the journey and made really impactful relationships with, um, looking out for me and helping me progress my career. Whether that's inviting me out to come, work with them, um, or sending me applications for jobs that are opening up, just like general care that people have given me, trying to help me out in finding ways to progress my career has been amazing. And I think that goes back to the people that you surround yourself with, the places that you put yourself, and then how you treat other people. Um, Now back to the Neil deGrasse Tyson one. I think curious people are curious. I love learning about just like random things. The other day on the bus, I was watching an hour-long video about termites. Like that's never gonna push the needle forward on S&C, But I think if you're a curious person, you want to learn about a lot of different stuff. And I think it says a lot about who you are. And when it does come to the S&C and the job specific stuff, like you still have that curiosity and you really go into depth and you want to learn the stuff. Um, so I think finding ways to kind of train your curiosity and become a more curious person is very beneficial.
Yeah, I've been, or I guess the question I have, maybe for me more personally, is like, I have always felt like if I dedicate, like, I like learning about different things, but I always feel like when I'm doing it, I'm like, this is time that I could be learning about. I could be reading Charlie Francis, or I could be reading Verkhoshansky. Have you ever felt like that or no?
Yeah, no, 100%. And I think I probably live on the opposite side of that spectrum from you, having lived with you for a number of years. Um, there definitely were times where I was like, man, I should probably be a little bit more like Anthony and probably be a little bit more focused with what I'm looking into and the things that I'm watching, the time that I'm spending when I do have free time. Because you were always someone that really did just like dive into the very specific S&C literature, training, philosophy stuff. Um, I think finding ways to just make it enjoyable. I know personally, I would go kind of insane if all I was ever interacting with was that stuff. That's how I felt like that's what school felt like for me, is that you never really got away um, from work. It was just the same information, just like all day. And so I need an escape from that at some point. And so learning about other things, learning little tidbits and random facts that might never help me out in S&C is still really fun for me. And I think there's an argument to be made that they help with your people skills and your ability to just interact with people because you never know who you're going to be talking to and what you're going to be talking about. And being able to pull information and just knowing about the world in general is very useful for that. Because at the end of the day, this is a person led industry, it's a service industry, and you got to make people want to be around you.
Yeah, for sure. And so, um, talk to us about like your job now, and I mean, we've talked about it before about how that has directed how you do your work in like a professional organization. How's it different from college?
Yeah. Uh, I think the biggest thing that is it's pretty constant. These are the players in the organization, the players that you're working with are really big investments from the organization. And so things don't just kind of turn off at the end of the day, like in the college setting. You're not really going home after a training session in the collegiate setting and having a bunch of messages about players and their performance and where things are going with them. Um, where you get off work here and you probably have another hour that you spend just like catching up on messages, making sure you know kind of all the organizational moves that are going on and where resources are being allocated to certain people. Um, and then also just like the people that you're around. I wasn't. You might, I guess, maybe have this a little bit more at ISP and with the TCU baseball team, but like being around the skill coaches, um, I didn't have a ton of at Cleveland State, and so now being in the same room as them, like all day essentially, you get wrapped up in a lot of more conversations about the actual skill side of things, um, and that's been a place where I feel like I am very much a novice and I can't contribute a whole lot, but I still really want to be part of those conversations. And I want to try to give input where I can and learn from those conversations. And that's where, going back to what I said at the beginning, like I often feel really lucky to be the dumbest person in the room because it means you can just kind of sit back and listen and just like
Hmm.
take everything in. Um, and really, you're the biggest winner in that situation.
Right. I think that's I like wholeheartedly agree with that, even more than the things that I'm into in terms of strength and conditioning is like talking to people who really understand the skill side. For me, that was like David, who's with the Orioles now. Whereas like this guy has a good idea of like the strength and conditioning side, and then he's also a pitching coach. It was just like so fun to talk to him about that stuff because he would just like literally teach me everything about the skill side and all these different things. And it's like, I think we truly, one thing I've learned is like this year is I've undermined the knowledge of a sport coach because I always think about the things I could complain about, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
It's like we always want to complain about like the extra conditioning and like holding the players hostage and all that stuff when really it's like, especially with a sport like tennis that I don't know much about. There's like a lot of interesting things that I didn't even really think of that actually might contribute to my decisions. But, yeah. So what does like the schedule look like in terms of you lifting with your players? Are they lifting before the game? Are they lifting after? What does that look like?
Yeah. This will definitely kind of change based on what affiliate you're at and probably what organization you're with. Um, AA is a pretty cool spot to be because the proximity to the big leagues is pretty close. Just two levels of separation there. So there's a lot of autonomy that we give the athletes. We'll usually open the gym up an hour before our report time, which is kind of when the skill work gets going. So let's say we have a 6 o'clock game, reports at 1 p.m. Gym will usually open at 12. Guys can come in, especially early before that report time. It's mainly position players that are getting in, just get their lift before they have all their full schedule following the report time. But sometimes they'll come in, other times throughout the day. Pitchers will start trickling in and kind of getting their prep work done. We have them go throw and do all their sprint or conditioning work before they lift. And then, depending on the number of times they're throwing a week, so really starter versus reliever, we have them kind of on different programs, different frequency of programs. So, a lot of our relievers are on kind of a microdosed approach. They have 4 to 5 lifts a week, really short, just usually 2 blocks, and they're doing those obviously every day. And the focus is based on around when they're available to pitch. And then for starters, we usually kind of break down the week into in between starts. And so instead of thinking about like a Sunday through Monday, think about if they're a Tuesday starter, it's Tuesday through Tuesday, and you're trying to get 2 lifts in between each start.
What are some things that you didn't know going into the job, good or bad, that you found that you have needed to do? I guess maybe not bad, man. I don't know if you should answer that, but yeah, just things in
um,
general. You don't have to answer it in a positive or negative way. Just
yeah, no, there's a lot of stuff. I'm probably gonna blank here on some of it, but one thing that like pops into my mind um, is just how much previous experience some of the people you're working with have, as far as coaches they've had in the past, things that they've done. Um, in college, I think it's a little bit more of like an authoritative process where like the team comes in, they're doing your lift, whatever you write, they're kind of on the hook to do. Um, in the professional baseball world, the players realistically, especially the higher levels they get a little bit more input into what they're going to be doing. Some guys run programs from coaches who just like do online programming for them. So they're coming into the gym, they're basically just telling us what they have, and we're just being there to support with whatever they need there. And a lot of guys will just come in and have those conversations with you of these are the things that they want to do throughout the season. And they'll kind of give you the freedom to choose the secondary stuff or the surrounding stuff around those big blocks. And so I think that's one of the bigger things that I've had to get used to and learn is that a players association protects guys from a lot of stuff, so you can't really force them to do anything. And B, you have to have a lot of those conversations of understanding that the player feels that this is what they need to be most ready to perform, and this is what you think they need to be most ready to perform, and where's the middle ground in that, and how can you talk to them and present that middle ground in an appealing way to them.
yeah. So what are some of the strategies? Obviously, I mean, you might find yourself in a situation where everyone wants to know how to get athletes to buy in. What have you found to be good tactics for that
Yeah,
at the
this
pro
is
level?
a big development piece that I'm still working on a lot. And shout out to Jonah, who's the head here. And even when I was at Champion, he did a really good job of this. And it's something that I've always talked to him about is kind of knowing how to follow up on certain things and just regular conversation.
Mm,
So a really prominent strategy that he always uses and has talked to me about is like start off with like very basic small talk with people. And then the minute, anything kind of that looks appealing to kind of chase down comes up, like dig a little bit deeper on that aspect and try to turn that like small talk into like a very focused conversation about what the athlete feels like they need. A lot of guys really don't come in and they'll complain, but it's very like surface level complaints. Um, and you also see them every day. So I think a lot of guys feel like they don't necessarily need to tell you how their body's feeling or what they feel like they need. So just learning how to dive into little points in the conversation and expand those out into broader conversations um, is kind of the general strategy there. I know that was a very broad answer. But an example of that might be a guy comes in and they're just telling you that their body hurts and they don't want to lift that day. Like that's something you can just be like, oh, ha ha ha, or just be like, oh, that too bad you're lifting today. But like if you really dig deep onto that, you can maybe figure out ways that you can support them better in the future, whether that be making them more consistent with their prep routines before they go out. Maybe they don't want to do a certain exercise on a day that they throw. It's making them feel fatigued before they go out. So switching around the order of things in their program, just little touch points like that. The more you can have with somebody, the more you kind of understand their individual response to the training load, and the more that you can make their training more effective and get the most out of their performance.
yeah, for sure. I like that. I think you have to really uh, understand what it's cliche, but like what makes someone tick in a way, and you don't have to always like. It sounds like force that out of them. It's more just like you said, starting with small talk and slowly getting into deeper conversation.
For
I've
sure.
um I've talked to like a couple of pro strength coaches, and I've heard or seen a program that's more um, how should I say it, in a way um, like providing less stress on the body, and then I've heard some organizations with like the philosophy of because it's been because they're pro baseball players and they're really good that their their training in the past has always been like easier and they need to actually be pushed more than they are. Like I know we obviously had a podcast with Cockrell and he talked about how he thinks most of the training is actually like not stressful enough because if you're stressing them enough you're kind of building out that capacity for them to train. What have you found? What's your experience been like? Do you think that like it should be more they should be pushed more or you know or less or you know
Yeah, I think yes, a little bit of both, and then also no, neither. And this is goes strictly into like this is something that I've been thinking about a lot lately, and I'm really still trying to figure out my complete thoughts on it. Um, it's been very eye-opening and surprising to me how little we've done with some guys this season, and how much that they've developed and how well they've been performing like outing after outing, game after game. Um, Both on like the very general side, like jump numbers going up, and then on the specific side, like for a pitcher, velo PRs. And so just seeing like how little stress we need to apply on them throughout the season to still get those adaptations has been pretty eye opening. Much less than I previously would have thought. At the same time, there's a handful of guys who maybe don't respond to that as well as others. Um, and we have had a lot of conversations with guys specifically, but then also just between coaches of like, how can we pull back the reins even more to still get enough stimulus to create adaptations, but let these guys recover better, and have a little bit more time off in between days. Um, the minor league schedule is very intense. 6 days a week is a lot. Not everybody's playing every day, and especially at AA. It's rare that you get a guy playing all 6 days a week. They usually have an off day built in, but it does happen, especially when guys start to go down. Um, and so, a question I've really asked myself is like, how much added stimulus can you really afford to put on a guy, when the workload's already so high? And at the end of the day, like what they do on the field matters the most. So making sure that they're in the best situation every night when they go out to feel their best on the field and perform their best on the field.
Yeah, so going off of like the busy traveling schedule, give us an idea of what a week looks like, what
Yeah,
travel
I
looks
mean,
like.
we can just go this last week because it wasn't necessarily standard, but it was a similar feel to everything else. We were in Reading, Pennsylvania. It's about 7 hours from Portland. So on Monday, which was our off day, hopped on a bus, drove down. Took a little bit more because we had some traffic near New York. I think it took us around like 8.5 hours. Got into the hotel maybe a little bit before 5. That was kind of your off day, 5 till whenever you go to bed. So went out to dinner with some of the staff, just kind of enjoy that evening where you don't have anything. And then we had 7 o'clock games all week, and so got to sleep in a little bit each day, but usually got to the field around 11 to 11:30 to lift. Then players would start coming in maybe 12:30 to get their lifts in, and then you're kind of on the hook doing all the things that the job entails, for the rest of the day. Game is at 7. Average game, let's say, is 2.5 to 3 hours, so you're getting done around 10 p.m. With the game. Then you just have your post game stuff that you're kind of doing, trying to get out as quickly as possible. But you do have some responsibilities that you have to take care of. So add an extra hour on that. Usually getting back to the hotel around 11, and then it's kind of rinse and repeat for all 6 of those days there. And then Sunday night, we had 5 p.m. game, which sucks. It should be illegal on a getaway day. But so the game started at 5, got done around 8, and then packed up the bus as quickly as possible, got all the staff responsibilities done, and then you hop back on the bus for another 7-hour trip back. We got home around like 5 a.m. this morning. So that kind of eats into your off day again. And then we
Wait,
start,
you left at night and you got back in the morning?
yeah, so it was an overnight bus.
Oh my gosh.
Which isn't always like not every road trip is that far. But this like is the reality. So if you look at it from a player perspective, uh, this last week there were really no days off because travel's hard on the body, especially when you're on a bus for that long. Um, and so yeah, that's tough to. There were a couple guys on our team I think who played all 6 games this week. So it was a long bus ride on a Monday, playing 6 days, and then a long bus ride overnight back yesterday. You get the rest of today as your off day, and then the next series starts tomorrow.
Dang.
And so it's very intensive. It's constant. And you really have to be efficient and careful with the ways that you go about things because it's really easy to get overwhelmed and fall behind with things, and both as a player and as staff. So you have to make sure you're really on top of things and you're going and getting the things that you need.
Yeah, it's interesting to think that like for us it's a obviously college schedule that you go from playing 3 days a weekend to you could be traveling 6 days a week. It's crazy to me to like have a like as a player, obviously, especially if you're in the minor leagues, to have a family and be traveling that much, and if you have kids, that's
Yeah,
crazy.
yeah. It's
Um,
certainly, I've heard some stories about how it used to be. And this is certainly a better setup than it used to be. At least you get some consistency where you're home for a week and then you're away for a week.
right. So, in terms of travel, what has been the like coolest city you've been to, and then what's been the worst one?
Um, well, first off, I knew that I was going to enjoy this, but I really underestimated the amount that I would enjoy it. Minor league baseball stadiums are awesome, and just like getting to spend time every day in these like really historic minor league stadiums. Um, because some of these Eastern League stadiums are some of the older stadiums, and they've been refurbished, but they've been around forever. Like in Reading, um, I think that is one of the oldest sites in the U.S. It's literally called Baseball Town, and the crowds that show up to the field every day, like the energy is just awesome, and just getting to be on the field is fantastic. Um, so when you're at the field, I don't discriminate much. Like you either have a really nice park that's pretty new, or a really old historic one that might suck a little bit, but it is cool to be there and get to spend some time there. As far as cities go, I'm a little biased, but Portland is definitely the best city. Um, Outside of that, I thought Reading was enjoyable. It was a long week there, but there was stuff around our hotel and there were things to do. Um, Golf in Binghamton was pretty fun. Brought the clubs down and got out a couple times golfing. But that city as a whole, there was nothing, uh, which is a theme. Altoona, Pennsylvania, there is nothing. Um, Somerset, New Jersey was a cool place. I got to hop on a train after one of our day games and go into New York, and that was my first time in the city, so got to walk around Times Square and stuff.
That's it.
Go to a Mets game, so that was a fun experience. Um, but yeah, best city is the home one. There's a lot to do in Portland. It's a fun city, and it's really pretty at being out on the water and stuff. But um, yeah, you don't get a whole lot of time to explore these cities that you go to, but the moments you do get, it's fun to get out and just see these other historic parts of the country.
For sure. Have you been able to like meet other strength coaches on the road at all, or have
Yeah,
you?
interactions are kind of dependent on the setup of the fields we go to. But it has been fun to meet some of the other strength coaches, have some conversations with them, whether it's about S&C or just about life or just random things. Um, but yeah, it's been fun to interact with some of them, and then it's also been really fun to interact with other weight rooms aside from the home one. Uh, just kind of see what other setups people have, what other kind of technology that they're using. Yeah, it's just fun to get that scenery change.
Do you guys use any technology on the field in terms of tracking performance?
Yeah, I mean the biggest one I guess would be GPS stuff. So all our position players wear like player data GPS chips. Um, so it tells us their sprint exposures, their total yards per game, and we just kind of use that mainly for workload stuff, making sure nobody's running hot or if they're running cold, getting them a couple exposures pre-game, just so we kind of keep that acute to chronic ratio where we want it.
Do you feel like that's been, I mean, I'm assuming you didn't have GPS at Cleveland State, but was that pretty easy to learn that stuff? Was it just, I'm assuming you have an athlete management system where it gets
Yeah,
uploaded.
we have really good systems in place that make it honestly, I think so a caveman could kind of understand what's going on. Um, but yeah, it's been fun to learn that stuff. I mean, with all the technology as a whole, like even force plates, I got to work with a little bit at Driveline, but aside from that, like I haven't spent that much time around force plates. So just getting to experiment a little bit on those within my own training, but also just get to use them with the athletes, kind of get to see what we track versus maybe what some other people track, and where and why we pull certain numbers. Um, but yeah, pretty straightforward. Once again, going back to the systems that we have in place as far as like continued education goes, we have nice like on ramping system that kind of teaches you the fundamentals of understanding those values.
It's awesome. It's interesting how like it's funny how you were in Boston and now you're working for the organization.
Yeah, it is. I mean, certainly not. There's certainly correlation there, but that was never a guarantee. So it is fun to kind of get back to working.
Question.
No, I thought that was a fun conversation. I guess just like reiterate just how much that I'm still learning. It's been awesome to kind of to rediscover that part, especially going back once again, just the situation at Cleveland State sometimes made it feel like, oh, I knew everything, or this is the max that I need to interact with,
Mhm.
which is a really dangerous place to be in. And I loved my time at Cleveland State, but it's awesome to be back in a room where I realize like how much I don't know and how much I still have to go before I'm gonna feel like really ready. If you ever really get there, I don't know. Um, but yeah, I'm enjoying the journey again, enjoying the grind.
All right, Ron. Well, it's been a pleasure to have you as a a guest on the podcast, even though you're usually the host. But obviously, it's been cool to see your journey. Um, and yeah, even just over the time of our of our podcast, of you having, say, one, two, three, four. Is it your fourth position, right?
Yeah, something like that.
Like
First
your fourth,
job though, if we're really talking jobs, this is number one. So
your
a pretty
first
good place to
salary.
start.
Yeah.
Only downhill from here.
No, but it's been an absolute pleasure to be able to interview you. So
Oh, thanks, man. It's always fun talking with you. Like you said, you're one of my best friends, and so it's fun to get on calls and talk shop and just we don't talk enough, so it's good to get on the call.
yeah. Alrighty. Well, thank you everyone for listening. If you have any recommendations on people you'd like to like to hear or have on the podcast, let us know. I know we're both trying to get back to being on a more of a routine schedule, and I think we might have found something. So yeah, thank you for listening, and have a great rest of your day.
Take care, everyone.